Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Land Use Committee on Tuesday, February 4th. Here in the chamber, we have with us, I'm going to go in ward order just for the fun of it, from Ward 1, Councillor Allison Leary. First, I'm mentioning the members of the committee. Tariq Lucas from Ward 2. Me, Andrea Kelly, I'm from Ward 3. Randy Block from Ward 4. On Zoom, we have Andrea Downs from Ward 5. Here in the chamber, back to that, we have Councillor Lobovitz from Ward 6. Mark Laredo on Zoom from Ward 7 and Stephen Farrell from Ward 8. We have some other councillors joining us already that I've noticed. We have Councillor Krinsman, Councillor Getz, and Councillor Humphrey in the chamber. With us tonight also, we have some staff members who are very important. We have our clerk of the committee, Scott Matthews, and with us again, right in person, we have Jen Kyra and Katie Wewell from the Planning Department and Jonah Temple from the Law Department. Am I missing anyone that I should introduce so far? Oh, Councillor Albright from Ward 2. And walking in now, we also have Councillor Maliki from Ward 3, not on the committee, but council members too. So tonight, we only have one item before us, which is the Northland project. So I'm going to do a quick introduction so we all know how we're going to go about this tonight. The process is we're going to have a discussion and a public hearing beginning tonight. Probably 2, maybe 3 meetings altogether. So tonight's not the end of the opportunity for input. We'll keep the public hearing open. We're not going to vote on it tonight. We're going to hear a presentation. We're going to ask questions and make comments. And there's more opportunity for input at the next meeting or meetings, and certainly via email to citycouncil@newtonma.gov if you want to submit your thoughts. So tonight's going to cover a brief description of the background and the proposed changes, which is really an introduction to this petition for an amendment. The additional meetings I imagine having over the next 1 or 2 land use meetings will perhaps most likely be topic specific. For instance, on transportation, stormwater, urban design as needed and as time allows. The only portion of this project that the city council has any purview over are the proposed changes. This project has already been granted a special permit. They're coming before us tonight with some changes, and those are the things we're going to focus on. First, we're going to hear from the Northland team. We've got a timer on because we want to be efficient. We all don't want to be here till midnight tonight. So first, I'm going to introduce, I believe, Alan Schlesinger, who's going to represent the team and introduce other members of it. And we'll hear from them first.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, other city councilors here and afar. My name is Alan Schlesinger, a Schlesinger and Bookbinder, 1200 Walnut Street, Newton. I represent Northland Pattern District LLC, an affiliate of Northland Investment Corporation, and owner of the 22.6 acre site, Edam Street, Oak Street, and Tower Road, known as the Northland Newton Development. With me tonight are my colleague, Catherine Winters, Peter Standish, Senior Vice President of Northland, Kent Gonzalez, Vice President of Northland, Chris Bridle of Stantec Landscape Architects, and Randy Hart of VHB Transportation Consultant. Before you tonight is a petition to amend the special permit in Council Order 426-18, approved by the council in December 2019. A graphic of the project as approved in 2019 is on the screen. Some councilors may recall that special permit approved the Northland Newton development to include, as shown on the graphic, 800 dwelling units, of which 140 will be inclusionary units, 115,000 square feet of retail and commercial space, 193,200 square feet of office space in the old Thaco Petty Mill, which we refer to as Building 1, which is some of the part of the discussion tonight. Since 2019, the project has been moving forward with very significant site and utility work and the commencement of construction underground and of the city's splash park. At the same time, however, Northland has faced the hard reality that office vacancies have reached historically high levels. Of the 22 office buildings within 3 miles of the project, the average vacancy rate is 31%, representing approximately 1 million square feet of available office space. The council will note that Northland is not alone in facing diminished demand for office space. The projects at Riverside and 275 Grove Street are also examples of the challenges in these markets. Northland's choice, expensive choice, but Northland's choice, and the proposal before you tonight is to take the hit, to shrink the project by over 10% by eliminating the office component and converting the Thaco Petty Mill building, which we call Building 1, shown on the screen, to residential use, creating an exciting opportunity for loft-style housing on the site. Our goal is to make the project shovel-ready while maintaining all of the public benefits. The revised project will result in significant traffic reductions, particularly in the weekday peak hours. It will also result in an increase in project open space and maintain sufficient parking for residents and retail shoppers. The best elements of the approved project have been kept, including a modified free public shuttle to Newton Highlands and a robust mitigation package, which Attorney Winters will describe in more detail.
My name is Catherine Winters. I'm an attorney with Schlesinger and Bookbinder, 1200 Walnut Street in Newton. I'm going to start tonight by describing generally the program and planning changes proposed in this amendment. The first important thing to note is what is not changing from the approved plan. Approximately 85% of the site is unchanged. Areas without changes include Needham Street frontage, including the Building 7 Mobility Hub, Main Street from Needham Street through the site, Village Green, and Charlemont Street from the new traffic light to the South Meadowbrook Park. The changes in summary are the mill building is being converted into 100 units of housing instead of offices. 5 smaller residential buildings around the rear of the site and on Oak Street are being eliminated. Portions of buildings 5B and 8 are being reduced, and a new landscaped surface parking facility for 124 cars is being added in the place of the eliminated buildings, which will be described in more detail by our landscape architect, Chris Bridle. Eliminating 193,000 square feet of office space results in a dramatic decrease in the traffic generation, particularly in the weekday afternoons, as our traffic consultant, Randy Hart, will explain. These proposed changes bring the residential unit count to 822, up from the approved 800 units, and add 4 additional affordable units for an overall count of 144 affordable units. This slide shows the revised parking plan. The shaded areas in red represent portions of underground garages being eliminated. The new 124 stall surface parking area is located at the rear of the site. The net result will be 216 surface parking stalls and 854 garage stalls for a total of 1,070 stalls. No change is proposed for bicycle parking, which will remain at covered bike storage for a minimum of 1,100 bicycles. This slide shows the updated master plan for the commercial component of the project. The overall retail and commercial square footage is approximately 96,000 square feet, and the approximate locations of the retail and restaurant space for each building are shown on this slide in pink. Now let me turn to the work that has already been completed over the past 2+ years throughout the 22.6 acre site. This schematic shows the utility lines, over 28 miles of lines, which have been installed underground on the site. The city's water main has been extended down Tower Road and across the site to Oak Street to create a loop. A new connection to Mechanic Street has been added, improving the city water service to that Upper Falls neighborhood. The bank restoration work along South Meadowbrook has been completed. A protective concrete culvert cap has been installed throughout the entire site, and the brook has been daylighted at the small waterfall near the southeast corner of Building 3. The drainage infrastructure for the approved project has been installed, including 250,000 gallon infiltration system and a 120,000 gallon rainwater harvesting system. Paved roadways have been constructed, including the site access points. The undergrounding of utility lines along the perimeter frontages is ongoing. All of the underground conduit work along Needham Street has been installed and coordinated with the MassDOT improvements. Those MassDOT improvements include the new aligned intersection at Needham Street and Charlemont Street. In total, over $78 million has already been spent on the site in utility work. And it would only be a slight exaggeration to say that the project has largely been built, except for the buildings. Work is already underway for the community splash park located at the southwest corner of the site along the Greenway. The park is expected to open in time for this upcoming summer. While the program is being modified and the project square footage is shrinking by approximately 10%, Northland is committed to the mitigation package agreed to in the 2019 permit. This includes $5 million for off-site traffic mitigation and improvements, $1.85 million for I&I improvements with no adjustment for the reduced project size, $1.5 million for improvements to or replacement of the Countryside School, and the community splash park now under construction along the Greenway. I will now turn to Chris Bridle to describe the site plan changes in more detail.
Hello, I'm Chris Bridle. I'm with Stantec, a landscape architect at 40 Water Street in Boston. And this image is showing our village green. It remains unchanged and is still the major focal point within the Northland development. The mill building in the background of the image has been reprogrammed for residential use. The aesthetics of the building have not changed. There's a new entry on the mill building in the village green, and the character of the building has not changed. Next slide. This shows the floor prints of the building. There's a new unique opportunity for loft style units in the historic building. And again, the character of the building remains preserved with brick and beam construction. Next slide. This shows the three areas of the master plan that we will be talking about today. The new parking area adjacent to buildings 5A and 5B, with the elimination of one floor from building 5B and a small adjustment to the end cap of the building. There's increased green space due to the reduction of the footprint of building 8 and a new green park extension along Oak Street. Next slide. This image shows the circulation through the parking area. We're maintaining the integrity of Lattice Road. There's new traffic calming measures, including more circuitous vehicular routes through the parking area from Oak Street to the Tower Road. The pedestrian circulation shown in orange through the parking area is prioritized to allow pedestrians to circulate from Lattice Road to the community splash park, and also bisects the parking area to allow a new focal point through buildings 5A and B to the Main Street retail corridor. The pedestrian entrance point remains focused along the Community Park Gateway and Lattice Road to the south. And then there's a new, existing entrance at the north from the Greenway. Next slide. This image shows, again, the prioritization of the pedestrian through this new parking area. We're showing these new sculptural gateways and tabled pedestrian crossings with new ecological planting. We're proposing also to draw people through the parking area to the new portal between buildings 5A and 5B. Next slide. This shows a close-up of the gateway, again, through the portal between the two buildings with retail on the ground floor. There's a gymnasium on the left and a cafe retail space on the right. Next slide. We're going to show you a series of images along the Greenway. This is an existing condition image that shows the large mature trees along the Greenway. Next slide. And here we're showing within the property boundary, new proposed understory planting and new shade trees within the parking area. And the proposed buildings are approximately 200 feet away from the property boundary. Next slide. It shows the midpoint along the parking area in the Greenway. This existing conditions, again, showing the existing mature trees and the chain link fence in the mid-ground. Next slide. And again, proposing our new understory planting within the project boundaries and new shade trees within the parking area. Next slide. Lastly, at the south of the parking area, showing existing trees again. And if we go to the next slide, we're showing again the proposed understory planting, the shade trees, and the building in the foreground. Next slide. So we're now talking about building 8. Next slide. And this shows the former outline of the building shown in pink dashed line with a new proposed reduction of building 8. This allows us to have a much nicer, larger buffer between South Meadowbrook and building 8. Next slide. Lastly, we're going to show you Oak Street Park extension. If we go to the next slide. This shows again the circulation that we're proposing through the new park extension, which is shown with the pink dashed line. The orange line shows pedestrian connections up to Carden Lane and the Splash Park, and a new connection through the park to the Village Green and the retail corridor. We're also noting here that there's an improved Petty Square. And so this new space, this new Gateway Park, takes advantage of that improvement to Petty Square. Next slide. And lastly, showing that a visual of that new park, showing that gateway through the space. You can see building 4 in the background and the new path that takes you to Carden Lane and the Village Green. And I'll now hand it over to Randy. Thank you.
Good evening, Randy Hart. I'm a principal with VHB. We're located at 101 Walnut Street in Watertown. I'm just going to touch on a few aspects of the traffic work. First is, as Ms. Winters has already mentioned, the project is getting smaller, and as such, traffic is getting reduced as well. As you can see, the approved project that we had previously had 800 residential units, 193,000 square feet of office, 115,000 square feet of retail. The current project has 822 residential units, but no office at all, and then 96,000 square foot of retail. So the office is gone and the retail has been reduced, but the residential count's gone up by 22. What that translates to in the table on the far right, it shows what the difference is between what's been approved and what is now being proposed. It shows a 13% reduction during the weekday morning peak hour period, a 22% reduction, or no, excuse me, 13% on a daily basis, 22% reduction during the weekday morning peak hour period, 31% reduction during the evening peak hour period, and 13% reduction during the Saturday daily, 22 during the Saturday midday. So we'll be happy to. So overall, it's just showing traffic going down significantly during all periods. The elimination of the office, I think, is key component to that. As part of our petition, we have provided to the city a revised TIA, Traffic Impact and Access Study. It's dated December 3rd, 2024. We know that the city's peer reviewer, Beta, is reviewing the TIS, and we look forward to discussion with them. Note that queuing diagrams were included in the study per the special request of Councilor Block. So they're in the attachments, I believe, Mr. Block. If you have trouble finding them, let me know and I'll help you. In terms of access to the site, there's really no changes to the access. In fact, all of the access driveways are already built. They're already in place. The Needham Street Improvement Project is essentially complete as well. And the new signal at the Charlemont and Needham Street Road intersection is in place, but not yet operational. As part of the state project and some of the tweaks to the driveways, there's been a number of things added, including left turn lane extensions, separate bike lanes for enhanced safety. The light that I just mentioned, that light incidentally will be connected and coordinated to the other traffic signals up and down the corridor so as to provide as much efficiency as possible along the corridor. Next slide, please. Traffic demand management, the plan is mostly unchanged and we will continue to have a robust plan throughout. The mixed use nature of the development will provide internal resources and options so that people don't have to leave the facility or frequent other places to get services and goods that they might otherwise need. Reduction in the office space is a major TDM plan in and of itself by eliminating nearly 1,000 trips from the project every day. We certainly will have shared bike stations such as Blue Bikes. Dedicated shuttle system will provide a reliable, comfortable last mile home to work or home to transit. And finally, as Ms. Winters mentioned also, there will be at least 1,100 covered bike parking spaces in the site. And with that, I'll turn it back to Ms. Winters.
Ms. Winters, this is not hard and fast, but just to remind you that you're a little, given the 20 minutes you wanted, you're a little beyond that.
Yep, understood. Thank you. I'll just have a quick conclusion here. To conclude our presentation, I want to summarize the major elements of our petition to amend Council Order 426-18. The amended plans show conversion of the mill building to 100 units of loft-style brick and beam housing, elimination of 5 smaller residential buildings around the rear of the site, reduction in size of buildings 5 and 8, a net decrease of 193,000 square feet of office space, and a net increase of 22 units of housing, a net reduction of approximately 160,000 square feet of building area, approximately 10%, and an increase in open space, including an expanded Oak Street Park. A net traffic reduction of 947 cars per day, including 31% of the afternoon peak traffic. We've emphasized that large portions of the project, other than the vertical construction of buildings, have been completed or are under construction at a cost of over $78 million. The public benefits of the project are retained, including the free public shuttle to Newton Highlands for morning and evening commuter hours. Northland is committed to implementing the shuttle and will work with the city to evaluate it over time as to its efficacy. The project will include an additional 4 inclusionary housing units, bringing the total to 144 units. And Northland is not seeking any adjustment to mitigation payments to the city for public benefits, despite the project's reduced size. Going forward, we've been in contact with the planning department's peer reviewers, and we look forward to their reports. We understand that the next hearing date is March 26th, and we hope to have their reports back in time to provide responses. We also expect to be working with the planning department to identify those conditions of the 2019 order which require amendment to reflect the site plan changes and the elimination of office space, with an eye towards updating the order as simply as possible. That concludes our presentation, and we look forward to your questions in our next hearing date.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to the planning department. Ms. Wewell?
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Katie Wewell from the Planning Department. Would the petitioner mind unsharing the screen? Thank you. This is intended to be a higher level overview of what was in the planning memo, but obviously there's much more detail in the memo. So we have petition 7-25 at 55 Tower Road, also known as 400 Main Street. The subject property is located within Newton Upper Falls, within a block of land containing approximately 22.6 acres, situated on the west side of Needham Street, north side of Oak Street, and also east of the Upper Falls Greenway. The site is within 500 feet of the Newton-Needham boundary. And with the issuance of a building permit and ongoing construction of the splash park, the special permit and subsequent rezoning are in effect. So the site is considered within the business 4 zone. The Needham Street Vision Plan, adopted in 2018 as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, emphasizes Needham Street's location as a gateway to Newton from the west and functions as an independent, distinct district from Newton Highlands and Upper Falls. The plan also notes this area as one of the most paved areas in the city. Special permit 426-18 allowed 16 buildings, 800 residential units, and a mix of office and retail space. Building 1, the historic mill building, was to include 193,200 square feet of office space. The prior approval contains conditions that govern the petitioner's responsibilities around the design review process, community benefits, residential unit affordability, construction, sustainability, parking, traffic mitigation, and trip reduction obligations. The petitioner proposes to amend the project by eliminating 5 buildings, adding 22 residential units, and modifying building designs as well as altering the parking. There is one item of zoning relief required that was not included in the planning memo, and that is to waive the sustainability requirements under the zoning ordinance for building 1. The adaptive reuse to residential for a building of this size requires passive house under the current stretch energy code. However, that code does provide an exemption for adaptive reuse. Building 1 is on the National Register. It's required to be maintained as part of this project and subject to a memorandum of understanding with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. The building code, energy code, as well as the zoning ordinance all govern the construction of this site, and their sustainability plans for building 1 don't quite meet the exact letter of the zoning ordinance. Planning anticipates covering this in more detail in a subsequent memorandum. As outlined earlier, the petitioner is proposing modifications to the site plan. Overall, office space is almost entirely eliminated, leaving just 5,000 square feet for medical office use. There'll be a net increase of 22 residential units, and retail is decreasing by almost 20,000 square feet. The petitioner also proposes to reduce the overall parking count from 1,350 parking stalls to 1,070 parking stalls. While surface parking is proposed to be added, the overall impervious cover of the site is actually decreasing. While the petitioner did not provide a calculation for this, they stated the current proposal further reduces the impervious cover by 1.1 acres. Staff anticipate at the request of the petitioner that traffic conditions under the previous approval may be revisited. Prior traffic conditions are quite complex and will require an in-depth review and discussion amongst the petitioner and committee members. When reviewing this request, the council should consider whether the site is an appropriate location for the proposed amendment to this prior special permit, which amends the approved site plan and mix of uses. Whether the proposed amendment that modifies the approved site plan and mix of uses will not adversely affect the neighborhood, whether there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, whether access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved. And lastly, this is bolded because it was not included in the planning memo, but it's the sustainability criteria. So literal compliance with these sustainability requirements for building 1 is impracticable due to the nature of the use or that such exceptions would be in the public interest. Staff are in close contact with committee leadership on the schedule for this petition as well as topics for hearings. The city has contracted with consultants that work on behalf of the city. They will analyze and produce reports in the following areas, but only where the project is changing. So Beta will be reviewing transportation aspects of the project. Horsley Witten will be reviewing stormwater. NBBJ with urban design around the new open areas of the site, the surface parking in the context of the Upper Falls Greenway. And we anticipate initial reports from all consultants at the next hearing, which is in late March. Tonight is an introduction to the project and an opportunity for the public and the councilors to express areas of concern and any questions they would like planning or the consultants to review, follow up on, and incorporate into subsequent memorandums. And that concludes the planning presentation. We look forward to any questions and subsequent discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wewell. I'd like to welcome Councillor Oliver, who has joined us via Zoom also. Next, we're going to hear from the public, and I'll just remind the public both in the chamber and on Zoom to please focus your comments or questions on the proposed changes. So keep directed there, and you'll have 3 minutes. If you're here in the chamber, you'll see a little timer up on the screen, and if you're on Zoom, there's a timer also. So if you're in the chamber and would like to speak, you can come to that podium, and if you're on Zoom, just please raise your hand and we'll let you in and let you speak. Jack, are you coming up? Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Jack Neville from Newton Upper Falls.
Let's just make sure that's on.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm on the area council. I'm president of the Upper Falls Community Development Corporation. Lived in the village since 1965. So I've been around a long time. And I think, this project, we worked real hard on this. And my biggest problem with this new design is the parking. Parking. That's our problem in Upper Falls. I don't know how many they eliminated. I know it's around 250 or 300. I'm not sure. But they're down at 1,070 parking spaces. And it was 1,300, maybe I didn't look up my numbers before I came here, but I don't see why we should be eliminating any parking spaces. I understand the economics of what they're doing, and that, you know, I really don't have a problem with that, but I have a problem with parking. So that's my number one problem. My second one is I was dead against the exit and entrance on Oak Street. And this is the area council talking. I'm talking for the area council tonight. They did send a letter into the councilors. We discussed, we're dead against that exit and entrance on Oak Street. And of course, we lost. But now we're thinking maybe the best way to solve the problem is to have it only an exit. I mean, only entry exit for off of Oak Street. That might solve the problem. Because from Oak Street, from where that into the intersection is, there's going to be a set of lights, and within, I'm going to say 60 feet, there's another set of lights, right in the village. So I don't see how it's going to work. If they go into the development, they'll be out of the way. They won't be going through the village. So those are my only 2 points tonight, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neville. And just to confirm, we did receive the letter.
Yeah, oh, good, thank you.
We've gotten that. So thank you,
All right, thanks again.
council, for sending it.
All right.
Next, we have online on Zoom, Deb Crossley.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. It's no surprise to those of you who I have worked with for many years that I am a huge supporter of this project. Frankly, as an architect, as well as someone who lives very close to this project, it's a brilliant design. I think it's the best project Newton has produced in my 40 years here. To me, this should be a no-brainer, as they say, because for those who oppose the project and were concerned about traffic, I believe you're reducing about conservatively 3,000 trips a day by removing the office space. I'm sorry that we can't have a more diverse set of uses, but that is the market today, and that's what we're dealing with. These folks have hired the best and the brightest, and these buildings and the spaces between them, the open spaces that all of the public and all of Upper Falls will be able to use, are simply beautiful. They are so thoughtfully designed and carefully designed and well appointed. Removing the buildings along the greenway will give an extraordinary amount of distance between the greenway and the buildings in this project, really focusing the mass of the project totally toward Needham Street. As you've heard, none of the amenities are going away. None of the impact fees are going away, even though the project is smaller. In terms of parking, I believe the parking reduction is because of the office reduction. Removing the parking for the offices makes sense. They're no longer going to be there. The same amount of parking will exist for the residential uses. And there will be on-site parking, which I think actually, I know a lot of folks don't like pavement to show, but some on-site parking actually is a benefit for the small retail community. I really hope, more than anything else, that the council will make quick work of this. This is a relatively minor amendment to a project that was not only approved by council by a wide margin, but also was approved by the people. It went to referendum. That was difficult. It delayed the project, and then we hit COVID right after that. But the people of Newton decisively approved this project. It will be transformational for that part of the city. And the council order that was penned back then, 40 pages, is pretty much what's going to continue except modified for the reduced uses. So please do not protract this process. We are so far behind in creating the housing we need for our community. Lengthening the process will only make that worse. It can only make that worse. So I urge my city council to make quick work of this to the extent that that is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crossley. Just a little over 3 minutes, but thank you for showing up and speaking. Are there any other members of the public, Zoom or in the chamber, who would like to speak to this? And if you're not raising your hand yet, I want to reiterate that there is still time to make your public comment. You can send an email to citycouncil@newtonma.gov. The planning department and the petitioners are here tonight listening to your comments and want to incorporate your questions and comments in what we hear next. The next meeting, as was said, is March 25th. So we have a good amount of time to incorporate your comments. Again, I don't see any hands up now. Don't let that stop you. Oh, yes, there was one quickly. No? Up, down? Lynn Weisberg. I see a few more now. Yay. Go ahead, Ms. Weisberg.
Thank you very much. I want to basically second everything that Ms. Crossley just said. I won't repeat those points. This is a project that is being scaled back in ways that the market has demanded, circumstances beyond the developer's control. The changes are, as again, Ms. Crossley said, relatively minor and reduce the density and reduce the traffic that was the concern of people who had opposed the original project. So I would urge the council to look, first of all, only at the changes that are being sought, limit public comment only to the changes that are being sought, and make a decision as quickly as possible to approve the amendments sought. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weisberg. M. Ward on Zoom.
Hi, thank you. Margaret Warren, 957 Washington Street. Yeah, my comment is directly in relation to this amendment. I guess if I understand, I apologize, I came in a little bit later, but if I understand correctly, we are changing, we are replacing some aspects of this development that was going to be commercial based to residential, correct?
Yes.
I think that's okay. And I'm just curious, does and you know, and I understand, I hear from the developer that you know, the market has changed and this makes sense. I'm just curious, do we get input from our Department of Economic Development? Do we get a evaluation from them as well on these matters? I don't know if John Sisson is involved in this, but I'm just curious. Like, I'm looking on their website and it says that the department is responsible for connecting business tenants with available space. So I'm just curious, do we employ our Department of Economic Development on matters such as this? Because we are looking at changing commercial, what was deemed to be commercial space to residential. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see Mr. Sisson on this call. But that is something he would look at, and yeah, we'll look into it and can get back to you. I don't have an answer for you specifically because he's not here right now, but thank you for your comments. Carolyn Kraft. Carolyn? You are unmuted. Are you here to speak? We'll move on and come back to you if you're still here. Yeah, now you're muted. Okay, next, Gail Deegan. Gail, you are muted. Can you unmute yourself? Oh. Gail, can you accept the request to join in that was sent to you? Well, we'll come back to Gail too. The technology. Janet Sturman, you're up.
Hi there, Janet Sturman, Church Street, Newton Corner. I'm really concerned about the reduction of the elimination of the commercial component on this property. I think that when you're adding this many tenants to a residential living area and not providing for commercial space for the multitude of commercial services that are usually provided in a village center that has always existed without the controls of government overseeing it like we're seeing these days, but just the availability of space for doctors' offices, any kind of rehab kind of service, any kind of commercial services that you can get in a commercial center where commercial space is available. I'm highly concerned allowing them to eliminate that. And it's I don't know, and I really can't stand hearing these comments about these sorely needed residential properties. I'm sorry, there's so much housing going to be available in Newton in rental apartments. This can slow down a little bit more. That's okay. I think we need to take a very, very clear look at what we're doing with things like this, and making this change should not be done quickly or at the whim of the planning department. So that's my feedback. I hope you will be very judicious before allowing Northland to cut out the commercial space component of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sturman. Let me just back up for a second and see if Carolyn Kraft, I don't see her still on here, but I want to give her a chance. Carolyn, if you're listening, I'm trying to let you feed in. Ditto for Gail Deegan. Carolyn, I see your hand up. Can you unmute and speak? You're unmuted. Carolyn, it looks to me that you're here and unmuted. Oh,
Unmute.
you
Hello?
are. Yay, we hear you.
Yay, okay, great. Thank you, everybody. I'm at 295 Dudley Road, and I wanted to ask the question in the presentation. It looks so beautiful, but what I didn't get a feel for was how many floors are in this development. As I remember, there were 8. Am I correct? Hello?
We're here. I'm not going to do a back and forth, but you're asking your question and we'll see if we can get it answered.
Okay, because the reason why I'm asking is because it's when you're taking back space from the business aspect, creating more green space, but then taking, why wouldn't you be able to take away some of the floors and just, embellish more of the spaces that you have on the ground level? Because I remember that was one of the biggest issues that the residents did not like, was the tower-like appearance. And the presentation doesn't really exemplify the reality of that. It looks beautiful, and I would say yay, but I just remember 8 floors, and that doesn't seem to be displayed here. So it actually seems a little deceptive to what we're really talking about. And to minimize things would be maybe reallocate those floors to another area of the development. And the other piece is to change the narrative on, maybe we should be doing like an assessment on how many people actually use those bicycles. 1,100 bicycle areas. It seems like more of an ideology that maybe the planning department lives by, but I don't know whether the residents here really live like that. And we have to really come together as residents and planners to know what the reality is in application to our lifestyles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kraft. I think at the end of the public comment time, we'll let the petitioners answer some quick questions. And your questions or points may be answered at that time. Gail Deegan, are you still with us? I don't see you. We'll come back to you if you reappear. In the meantime, Sean Roach.
Sean Roach, 42 Daniel Street. I think it is unfortunate that there's losing the office space, and it would be nice to have a nice mix, but recognize the commercial realities. There are some interesting collateral benefits here. The removal of buildings along the back side of the property, if you consider Needham, the front side, near the residential areas, the bringing of some of the parking up to the surface right by those residential areas. So I think kind of obviating or minimizing some of the parking concerns, I hope, of the residents. That said, there's still too much parking. And I think since this was first presented and approved, we have learned a lot about parking and parking utilization at Trio and Austin Street, and 1,075 spaces or whatever it was for 800 units, and a reduced amount of commercial space just strikes me as still way too much parking. And we know that parking generates traffic. So if we really want to reduce traffic in the area, one thing to do is reduce the parking, particularly the parking that would be available for the folks who live in the apartments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. I don't see any other hands up or people standing in the chamber from the public. Oh, yes, we have one. Come up, sir.
Hi. I think I woke some people up. Roman Schwartz, 31 Carl Street. So right next to where we're building this. I have concerns about parking. That's kind of the reverse. I agree with the first speaker that I think we need a little bit more focus on parking and that area in general. Having been on Needham Street currently, there's overflow. I feel like if we open the gates, the construction site, people would park in dirt mounds. But aside from that, I had a question that I would like answered about the shuttle service. It says there is minimal modification to the shuttle service, but it doesn't specify what specifically the minimal modification is. And I'd like someone to answer what that is, considering that the shuttle service would probably greatly affect the travel patterns, especially if we're talking about 1,000 cars. If we want them to stay in their spots, then more shuttle is better. So at some point, if someone could post what the hours are, what the expected shuttle times are, that'd be great.
Thank you. I don't think you're the only person who wants to know more about the shuttle. What I think I'm going to do, I do see now we're going to have Gail Deegan, who's back to speak. I think rather than have the petitioner answer some of these questions now, I'm going to, after Gail Deegan or anyone else from the public, we're going to take it into the committee, and then we'll give the petitioner a chance to answer a bunch of questions that have been asked between the public and the council members. So Gail, yay.
Hope I'm on there.
You are. Uh-oh. Just lost you. Did you just touch a button?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to talk quick. I think this is an excellent project. I think that it's a shame that we can't have the office space, but it's an economic reality. And one thing that this points out to me, and I think to others, is time is not in favor of anything. When a developer or a homeowner makes a decision to buy property and build a home, they have a certain set of assumptions about the financials. The longer it takes for decisions to be made to grant approvals, outside effects happen. COVID happened, the price of all construction projects went up. So I would ask the council, the land use committee, to take into account in future decisions the impact that the delays take on granting something. And this is a case where the Northland has come back with an excellent proposal, and we need to approve it as soon as possible just to get it done. But I think there's a question about time, and I would ask the council to give some thought to that. It's the same thing that happened with the Mula property over in Nonantum, that it took so long to get the process done that external factors called for changes, and then people don't like the changes. So I think the Northland project is great. And having that many more units might help us to get towards our 8,300 units that we're supposed to be developing under the Communities Act. So those are my 2 points. Anything to build more housing needs to be done quickly, and all decisions need to be sped up. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you, Ms. Deegan. Could you just give us your address for the record?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. My address is 240 Upland Road in Newtonville.
Thank you very much. Okay. Frances Godine.
Thank you. 19 Crofton Road. I'm just struck by the continuing benefits that this project is going to bring to the city, even with the reduction of some of the space that's being a part of this amendment. I think this is great integrity on the part of this developer on behalf of the benefits of the whole city. Making use of the additional space for green space is just beautiful. And I think it will benefit us all for generations to come. The reduction in the car trips has also got to be a good thing, although I'm sorry about losing that commercial base as well. The facts are the facts, but I think the neighborhood and all of Newton will have some appreciation of the more limited number of car trips. And I hope that the land use and the full council will approve this beautiful and beneficial program to the city quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Godine. And to your point, and also to Gail Deegan's, I'll say I don't think there's any intention on the part of the city council to delay this. It is going to come back to us March 25th, and really everyone needs that time in between now and then to hear public comment and to answer questions, to think about crafting conditions, and to hear the peer reviewers and to hear from planning again. But it is our intention to move as quickly as we can on this while being responsible. Nancy Zollers.
Hi, Nancy Zollers, 154 Oliver Road. I look forward to all of the council members voting yes, because this project is well known to them and to us. And this project is of benefit to the well-known lack of housing that has been a subject of many, many council hearings and debates. And the need for the housing is enormous. And I consider the vote of yes as a yes for making Newton more livable for more people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zollers. Terry Sorrow.
Just a quick comment. Terry Sorrow from 44 Cook Street, Newton, Mass. The Nonantum neighborhood, and I'm chair of the Nonantum neighborhood, we did not delay Mueller's building, bad business choices to where it is now. And I just want to clarify, we love the building that is being proposed. What we're against is the MU4. And thank you.
Thank you. That doesn't exactly address the proposed changes to this project, but I understand your point. Thank you, Ms. Sorrow. Anyone else, or let's take it into the committee and hear questions and comments by the Land Use Committee members. Councilor Lucas first.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate all of the comments that I heard, especially the last one from Ms. Sorrow, even though it has nothing to do with this project. Thank you very much. But I want to just go back a little bit, and I want to talk about the office building that we are going to lose with the proposed changes. And, you know, I've been listening to everyone speak when they talk about the office market, and I'm hearing terms like the hard reality and COVID changed everything and the market conditions don't warrant the office space. And I just want to remind everyone on the council, everyone who is listening in tonight, that not last term, not last year, not last month, but last week, we heard the petitioner from 275 Grove Street, the Riverside Center, standing right up there, say that they invested $10 million, that's real money, $10 million in interior renovations for their office building over the last 18 months. And they found a tenant to use the office space. 100,000 square feet of office space is going to be leased in that large office building, 100,000. And I think this proposal is an elimination of just under 200,000 square feet of office space. So I want to pause on this. And I really do want to have a deep conversation. And I think we heard a comment from Ms. Ward about, has the Economic Development Director or the commission weighed in on these changes to the office space? Because I really do want to hear from them, because I'm having a very difficult time believing the narrative that the office space market is the same as it was in 2020 when COVID first started. It's now 2025. The project won't be completed for another few more years. And I'm thinking to myself, let's plan for the future. It's not 2020 anymore. The pandemic, you know, according to the US government, is over. You know, I think we need to look at office space in Newton. I understand some office space down in downtown Boston is not being used, but maybe we can get some of those companies to move out to Newton. Like, I mean, let's be creative with approximately 200 square feet of office space. This is a big loss for our commercial tax base. And I think we all need to have a conversation about that. And I would love to have that conversation with the Economic Development Director. So those are my comments on the office space. Everything else related to the changes with respect to the parking and the changes near the Greenway, I think those are all good changes. I like them. I don't really have any major comments on that. My comments are really just around the office space, because that is why we are here tonight. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. And I look forward to hearing other comments about this project. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. Councilor Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share Councilor Lucas's comments around that. I did want to hear a little bit more about the office space and why that is going away. But my understanding, though, that's office space versus retail space. There will be retail space here, and I would like to know some more details about the retail space opportunities, because, of course, that's a big amenity for the 822 units that are there. So that was one comment. I also did want to ask for some details on the modification of the shuttle service, so I look forward to hearing that. I'm really happy about the increase in green space, and I wanted to just take a little deeper dive into permeable surfaces. I know there's a very robust stormwater plan here, but anywhere where we can add more permeable pavement or pavers to also mitigate the the heat island effect that you get in areas where there's black pavement, I think would be a plus and really improve the quality of the green space there. And lovely to have right along the bike trail. And I'm thinking of wildlife as well along there, along with the improvements to the brook. Regarding parking, I just want to be clear, we are still separating the parking stalls from the proposed units. That's what we did before. So if someone wants or needs a parking spot, they would purchase one. If someone didn't, say someone didn't own a car, then they wouldn't bring a car. I think that's a real incentive to make sure that we're not creating too much parking, which I think has been happening throughout the city and many of our other developments. And then my last comment, and I'm sure this will come up again, there's 144 affordable units, and I'd just like to be reminded on the range of affordability there. I can't quite, it's been a while since we've discussed it.
What was the question, Counselor?
The range of affordability for the 144 units, is there a range? It's 80%, 50?
Or perhaps you can address that when you do your wrap-up answers to a bunch of
Yes.
questions while you consult. Just if I assume you're making a list of some of these questions.
Yes.
Thank you. You're on it.
And then I'll let my colleagues to comment as well, but I did want to say this also is one of my favorite projects. I really like what you've done here, and I look forward to hearing more about it. Thank you.
Counselor Block. Counselor Laredo, you will be next.
Thank you, Chair.
Madam Chair.
Sorry.
I had to let him know that,
Oh.
so he didn't think he was being ignored. I have him in
We
queue.
can't let him think he's being ignored.
No.
That would be very unfortunate.
I don't mind being ignored. Just go ahead, please, Counselor Block.
So I have an informational question and request, which can be answered later. But the planning department in its January 24th memo, and the petitioners do this as well, whenever the residential unit counts are displayed, there is no square footage associated with them. We get square feet for office, and we get square feet for retail, and we don't get square footage for residential. And I know people have those numbers, but they become very difficult to find. So it would be really helpful, at least for me. I don't know how other people kind of look at these charts, but I'd like to see the square footage, and then we can actually add them up and see what the total square footage is for the approved plan, for the proposed plan, the differential. Leaving this just to units isn't as helpful as it could be. Let's just put it that way. I can't resist a comment on the history of this project. One of our public speakers mentioned how overwhelmingly this was approved by the voters. Well, the voters of Upper Falls and the voters of Ward 8 that abut this project overwhelmingly voted against it. So let's not think that this doesn't cause a lot of differences of opinion around development in this city. Let's just leave it at that. In 2018, the Northland provided a fiscal impact analysis done by Fugere Planning and Development. And I noticed that the planning department has not retained an independent reviewer for fiscal analysis. So I would like to know, is there going to be a revised and updated fiscal analysis based on the new configuration for the plan? and if there will be an independent review of the fiscal analysis. Personally, I think it was very important in 2018 to have this data, and I think it continues to be important today. I don't recall if a wind study was part of the original requirement, but the height of the buildings was a major controversial issue. And if there wasn't a wind study, I'd like to see one now. It is a changed layout. And if we didn't have a wind study from 2018 to compare it to, well, I'm sure we could create one if necessary. The traffic analysis. This is going to take quite a bit of time to understand. It would be very helpful to me if the petitioner and VHB would create queuing maps that would show us precisely what the new queues will be at the peak times, at the key intersections. And if those queuing maps weren't created, I know the raw data was all there in 2018 and 2019 for the original studies. It would be nice to see how that varies. And I would just ask that in addition to the changes to the development, that any external changes that either happened or didn't happen, I'm sure the petitioner knows, there are site-specific growth projections from the 2018 report on future conditions. I don't know, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 of them. Some happened, some maybe didn't happen. So it would be really nice to revisit that. And that's all I have for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Block. Councillor Laredo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So let me start off with the reminder that I voted in favor of this project when it was presented to us a number of years ago, and I continue to believe it's a good project. I'm going to focus on a couple of things, going from the more minor to the major. I agree with Councilor Leary about the idea that we try to have more pervious surface and less impervious surface. I'm also interested in a better sense of what the screening is going to be between the greenway and the project itself. I think as much green space as greenery that we can put in there that's appropriate would be beneficial for all concerned. I personally do not want to get into the nitty gritty of that, at least certainly not tonight, but I'd like to see that. Second, this is brought up because of our experience on a prior project that's not this, but I'm going to ask the developers to verify publicly that the renderings that they're showing, particularly the renderings that they were showing about the mill building and the grass area there and towards the greenway are true and accurate, and they're fair representations of what's going to get built. Because I personally am going to rely on those renderings. So again, that doesn't have to be right now, and I'm not doubting the veracity of the developer, but I do want that representation, and I do want that representation on the record. Third question on the mill building, again, not for now, but I'd like to have an idea of how large the units are going to be. We're eliminating nearly 200,000 square feet of commercial space. I understand that doesn't necessarily get you 200,000 square feet of residential space. I understand the configurations are different, but would like to understand what we're buying here. So that leaves me with, and one other thing, I'm going to remind folks, this, and I voted for this, okay, but this is not a transit-oriented development. This is a mile from transit. So unlike a property which might be right next to the T, or right next to the commuter rail, or right next to a lot of other things, this project's not in the heart of a village center, and I think that affects the parking issue. I think we did it just right. The last time we did it, we spent a lot of time on the parking, with a lot of compromises. I think as with many things, it was a reasonable compromise. I'd urge us to leave it as is. Nothing's perfect, but I think we did a good job and I wouldn't want to upset it either way. Final issue, and this is one I am struggling with. I understand the lack of availability, the lack of feasibility for certain commercial space. If you talk to the real estate developers in particular, they're telling you they're having a hard time getting funding for the traditional office space. I understand that there are constraints out there. I work in downtown Boston. I know there's a lot of vacant space in the financial district in downtown Boston. With that said, however, two things strike me. One, this property is directly or nearly directly adjacent to a major highway, Route 128. Needham manages to build commercial spaces right on the other side of 128. So that concerns me. I also want to understand from our planning department exactly how much revenue we're projected to lose each year by not having commercial space. And I say that, colleagues, because I think this issue of diminishing amount of commercial space in the city is a critical one for the well-being of our residents. And here's why. If we are more heavily dependent on residential taxes, residential real estate taxes, that hinders our ability to fund necessary city services. We've got to be aware of that. That costs us money. And so here we are with a previously approved project, a carefully thought out project, and now we're taking away the real economic incentive behind it, nearly 200,000 square feet of commercial space. That's not to look down upon or diminish the amount of housing being built, which I think is important and necessary. But we have to confront the fact that on this project and others, we are now going to be more heavily dependent on residential revenues to fund our budget. That is an issue for us. And that affects the most needy in our community because they're the ones disproportionately affected by these things. So, Madam Chair, I apologize for the long-winded statement, but what I would ask is I want to hear very clearly from the planning department when they come back next time, what the anticipated loss of commercial revenue is going to be each year, what the anticipated loss of permitting and other fees is going to be because we have a diminished project and there's going to be a smaller amount there. And I want to know if anybody on the city is looking at the developer's finances, understanding there's limits to doing that, but understanding their financial basis for their decisions. I'll leave it at that. Thank you. And I want to reiterate, I think this is a good project. I want to be very clear about that. But I do think we have to have a very candid discussion about the tax issues that are being raised here. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, President Laredo. I see hands of two more Land Use Committee members. First, Councilor Lobovitz.
Thank you, Chair. Many of the comments and questions that I had have already been expressed. But I have three one to elaborate on. One, since I'm relatively new to this, I make an assumption that this kind of, or any kind of residential development will add to the infrastructure costs of the city. So supportive of streets, repairs, whatever it is. And I wondered whether the city could try to calculate what that additional cost would be as a result of this development. Secondly, I wanted to know what the breakdown is in terms of not just the size of the residential property, but the number of bedrooms, breakdown of the units in the, I think it's 822, I believe. And lastly, I want to follow up on the question of the egress and entrance on Oak Street. And I don't know a lot about that. I'd like to hear more about what the issue really is, if that could be changed, or it should be changed as a result of traffic patterns and improved traffic and perhaps parking in the immediate area. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Lebovitz. Counselor Downs.
Hi, thank you. I don't have a lot of comments, but a couple of questions, some for planning, some for the petitioner. I want to understand better the walking access to the Greenway. And to me, the big appeal of Northland, or much of the appeal of Northland, besides its many green features, and the quality of design, the quality of the development, and the amount of housing it brings us, is that it is primarily oriented toward the Greenway. We don't want this development to look like it's turning its back on the Greenway again. And I also want to make sure that the walking approaches from the Greenway are intuitive and direct, and I would argue not screened. While we don't want to be looking at the parking from the Greenway, we also want to be able to see our way into the development and have a reason to walk in or bike in from there. So I want to know how that works. I share many of my colleagues' questions and won't repeat them. For planning, I think the question on the Oak Street entrance, because we've hashed this out multiple times, is whether that is part of our purview, or does it remain unchanged and therefore is not part of our purview? And I think that will do it for me for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Downs. We have a couple of other counselors not on the committee who have questions and raised their hands. I'm going in order of how people raise their hands. Counselor Albright.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My question is about the new surface parking lot and the fact that the number of parking spaces has gone down and means that these parking spaces that are in the new lot used to be underground somewhere else. So I'm wondering why the decision to move them from underground to surface, and could they possibly be underground again? I noticed that one of our speakers liked the fact that you're having a surface parking lot. I'm not quite as happy about the surface parking, but so I'm not against it, but underground parking is certainly better to look at and allows more open space. I don't know if you saw the letter, if the petitioner saw the letter from Ellen Katz. She talked about the strip of land between the new parking lot and the Greenway, and was hoping that it would be landscaped. I don't know if we've seen a landscape plan. I haven't seen it, but could there be a landscape plan to make sure that if there is going to be a surface parking lot, could it be something that's very inviting to people to look at from the Greenway? And those are my questions.
Thank you, Counselor Albright. Counselor Humphrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think some of my questions were already covered in terms of the Greenway buffering and the financial issues around the office space vacancies and so forth. So I guess I would still like to hear more about the new vision, I guess, for the shuttle program, because I think at one point last year we had been talking about that there probably wouldn't be a shuttle, but now it sounds like there's still going to be some kind of shuttling. So love to hear more about that. And like I said, I guess my other questions were already addressed, although I guess briefly I'll just comment to answer some of the questions that Councilor Lebovitz had brought up. So some of that analysis around infrastructure impact was done pretty extensively on the original permit. So certainly, talk to the planning department and get that information. But of course, with this, we're only considering the revisions, which are almost inconsequential in terms of infrastructure impact relative to the existing issued permit, which you're not evaluating here. Things like stormwater, sewer, and water capacity outside of the property, that's all, massive capacity that we have in the city, regardless of how many additional units of anything that we build. We're way below our maximum capacity. So there's no, substantive impact there. And we just had the big state project on Needham Street to improve a lot of that stuff anyway. I don't think we're really assessing on property things as long as it works. And then, of course, as I think everyone knows, we can't legally evaluate schools' impact because of federal laws around that. So if that's implied in the infrastructure question, which I don't think it was, but I'm just flagging that again, since I know we have newer members since the last big project. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Humphrey. Councillor Getz.
Good evening. Thank you. I actually, most of the issues and the concerns that I have been addressed in terms of questions. I appreciate the concern of changing the surface parking area from impervious to pervious. I think that there's quite a bit that can be done there, but I would like that to be explored. And I'd also would like to sort of address whether or not the issues that were brought up by the Upper Falls Area Council in terms of the creating the one significant issue seemed to be the one with traffic from into the site from Oak Street into the Northland site. I think that that's something that we should really sort of think about seriously. And then the area that is, what we would consider the greenway, as well as the, that site, the Northland site, that buffer area really needs to sort of fold into a public-private partnership so that then we can create mutually beneficial community gardens or spaces that would sort of create a very sort of inviting and an opportunity for that to really sort of feel appropriate to be transitioning from the Greenway into the Northland site. I also wanted to ask about the traffic and whether or not the assessments that were given were based on incorporating today's traffic flow, as well as considering the other project that's across Needham Street, the 40B that was approved, and the volume of traffic that will be coming from that site. I want to know that that's all in consideration in terms of any sort of information or data that we're being given. And then finally, when I was reading through some of the documents, there's like an I&I mitigation cost of $7,187,779. And they were, the planning department was recommending a 75% abatement, but yet the city paid in to the revision of the construction cost of the sewer area for the sewer area 8 of $5 million. So I think that needs to be considered, in terms of how much the city has put into that sewer work. And I just don't know whether or not that's an appropriate amount to ask for in terms of abatement. Yes, like Councillor Humphrey, I'd like to understand more completely what is being proposed for the shuttle. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Getz. Councillor Oliver, thanks for your patience.
No worries. Thank you very much. This has been a really interesting, provocative conversation. I appreciate not only all the comments from the council, but the public as well. I would like to kind of build on what I heard from councilors Leary, Lucas, and Laredo. Look at that. I do think that understanding not only the financials around this is critical for the city, but I would like to just kind of suggest that one of the other things that we might ask or inquire about in combination with economic development from the city of Newton, as well as our friends at Northland, is to understand what other scenarios were, I'm going to use the term considered and dismissed before landing on this particular arrangement, where we're increasing housing, eliminating commercial, and lowering residential. I would just like to understand like how they arrived at that being the best combination for themselves, and understand how that impacts the city of Newton, because I do think that at least from the cheap seats over here in Ward 1, I would certainly like to understand that to a greater degree than we've been able to understand to this point. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Downs, I can't tell if your hand is just a remnant left up or whether you've raised it again.
No, I wanted to add one more question, if I might, and that was just about the residential parking and whether that is anticipated to be surface parking or underground parking, or just to get that split would be really helpful. Thanks.
I think that's clear on the plans, but that's something that the petitioner can answer. I don't see any more hands up. There were a lot of questions. I took notes. I'm sure the Northland team did and planning did. And what I think would be helpful first is I'd like to let planning have a stab at answering a few of the easier, quicker questions. I think a lot of many that were asked tonight might need a deeper answer at the next meeting, but whatever you would like to address or clarify tonight, planning, that would be helpful. And then I'm going to give the Northland team the same opportunity. Fight it out amongst ourselves.
Sure, we can share the spotlight. I think what's coming to me first was there was a lot of questions about economic development and John Sisson's role, our economic development director. He has been involved, and we can certainly consult with him further prior to the next memo. I think.
One other question I thought you guys might want to address tonight is the fiscal analysis part that was talked about or requested.
Sure. So I heard a number of things related to the fiscal analysis, and I think we'll need to go back and review internally and talk with the Director of Economic Development, John Sisson, as well as our assessing department. And we can provide a better picture of current conditions as well as what the loss of office means for the city as far as tax revenue. It was noted that the original project provided a full fiscal impact analysis. We did hire a peer reviewer to review that. Given the scale and scope of this amendment and that most of this focuses on sort of the viability of the office and what does it mean to convert the office to residential, I don't think a full fiscal impact analysis is necessary. It's not required under the ordinance as it is for such as the mixed use 3 zone. And it's not tied directly to any special permit criteria, but we can provide more information around the office to residential conversion.
Thank you. Anything else you folks want to quickly clear up tonight, or?
Just add, we heard a lot of questions and how we can package information such as the size of residential and the square footage, and we're happy to follow up on sort of those questions as well and how we put forth information.
Thank you very much. Okay, back to Mr. Schlesinger. Again, it's up to you what you'd like to take a stab at. I think some were low-hanging fruits, and some will be more complicated things for later, but why don't you go through your list of what you'd like to address for tonight?
I'm sure everyone's view of the location of the fruit is always different, but there are a couple of things I may be able to respond to. The first, I can say that Attorney Winters and I intend to invite Jack Neville and Sean Roach out to play a round of golf. Anyone who wants to come with us is welcome. We are meeting with the Economic Development Council next week. So we'll make the presentation to them, and I'm confident that they will get a response to you for your next hearing. In response to Councilor Downs, the residential parking is all in the building, in the structure. The surface parking is intended for retail use and generally seen as a convenience to have surface parking and easy walk from the retail areas. And there are certainly people who do not like to park in structures to go shopping. I think the plans show, although not as clearly as we would have liked, the greenway buffer. A lot of work has been done to work on our side of the greenway parking lot, of the greenway walking path. We did show the view from the greenway, so you could see the mature trees that are in the right of way. And on our side, there's another 20 feet between there and the parking. So that was, I think that's been carefully thought out. What we need to do is to present it, I think, maybe a little differently. On the Oak Street access, you did commission a report by Beta Associates in June of 2019. And I think you'll find that that report's available, and it indicates that removing the Oak Street access would have a significant deleterious effect at the Oak Street and Needham Street intersection. You got to go by it anyway to get there. So that was going to, the same traffic would be there, except instead of going on the site, we'll be going through that intersection. We can talk about the shuttle. The plan is to have a shuttle that serves the project better as a primarily residential project, so that it will be a commuter hour schedules, probably 3 to 4 hours in the morning, 3 to 4 hours in the afternoon, with about a 20 to 25 minute headway to Newton Highlands. And we think that will take the bulk of the load off. We want to try it. We want to see, we want to do it. And it said it would start at some level with the 400th apartment. And we want to see what works to get people to the public transportation. But that's the current commitment, is to do commuter hours back and forth. I don't know where that fruit was hanging, but that was what I thought I could answer right away.
Low enough. I just wondered if there were, on my notes, there were 3 things that I thought you might be able to answer quickly. The question about, are these buildings 8 stories high?
Some of them are, except the building 5 has been reduced. It is no longer 8 stories high. It is down to 7 in the rear.
Thank you.
Also, I do want to comment on, Ms. Deegan talked about the effects of time. And I think some of you knew, people say that time heals all wounds, but the late John Draggett, who some of you knew, who worked in Northland in the 90s, used to say, time wounds all deals.
I think that was Ms. Egan's point also.
Yes.
Do you want to, is the question about unit sizes and numbers of bedrooms a quick answer? Or is that something that you would rather come back and address at another meeting?
There's a table on the plans, but why don't we give it back to you with the package in a different fashion? We can also include the square footages as requested.
Yeah, a couple of people asked about that. Okay, those were my notes of low hanging fruit. Another question there?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, was there something else you wanted to say?
Building 5 was reduced from 6 stories to 5 stories.
Okay, and I think this gets into the like wind tunnel question that was asked too, which I think is something you will all come back and talk about next time.
Well, there's fewer buildings in lower heights, so when
The question was asked. So perhaps next time you'll address whether that's something you're going to study or not. Anything else that you want to cover tonight? Or anyone else on the team? You've got the floor.
To confirm, I sort of nodded at Councilor Leary that the parking is charged separately for the units.
So no change there. Wow. It's not even 9 o'clock. I'm not going to argue. I think it's possible that we're done for the night. I'm just going to remind everyone, particularly from the public, you can send questions and comments to citycouncil@newtonma.gov. And people will be able to, both the city council and the planning department and passing on to the petitioner will be able to look at those. We're meeting again on this on March 25th. It's possible that might be when things are concluded, though I have to guess very likely there'll be one more meeting after that for us to be able to consider the conditions that the planning and law departments will write up. But if things are going swiftly, as Mr. Schlesinger and Ms. Deegan suggested, it's possible we could wrap this up on March 25th. Are there any other questions or comments from anyone? No. Good night. Thanks for coming. We're done. We're motion to hold made by Councilor Lucas.
Move hold.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is obviously
Aye.
going to stay open on this, so there's still time. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.